Hello, everybody. This is Mahadeva. I hope you can hear me this time. I think you should be able to. All right, so we talked yesterday about the five elements, and sorry, I'm a little distracted and a little loopy. I just came back from surfing, so I'm kind of tired. So we talked about the five elements yesterday, and I explained to you how there's a way to use the five elements to achieve freedom from reincarnation, which most people don't know about. And there's a way to use the five elements which taps directly into the heart center. So today we're going to be talking about the three selves and how to integrate the three selves. But before we do that, let's just do a little recap here. So, you are a spirit being. You are literally a beam of light, infinite beam of light. And you have been downloaded into a physical body which acts as a three-dimensional virtual reality suit for this beam of consciousness. This beam of consciousness is beyond time and space. It is more powerful than anything in this matrix that we call reality, which is the entire infinite three-dimensional universe. It's more powerful than the entire universe. And so in order for your soul to be able to interface into this limited three-dimensional reality, it needs certain things. So it places itself in what the middle self within you. And that middle self is then surrounded by a power, a feminine, extremely powerful, lightning source. So imagine this little ball of light, inside this container that's filled with lightning, and the lightning is what suspends it. It's what allows it to be there. That lightning encases itself and not only protects the three-dimensional reality from this infinite point of light, but it also protects this infinite, timeless point of light from the harshness of three-dimensional reality. Okay? So that's you. That's you. Now, in this three-dimensional meatbag virtual reality suit that you identify with, because of course when you have an avatar, you identify with your avatar, right? So you identify with this. This three-dimensional meatbag suit has all kinds of tools and systems within it that help the soul get the most out of its three-dimensional virtual reality experience. Okay, still with me? So among them is the spinal column and the nervous system. So the nervous system does things that you're aware of. It gives you touch, allows you to feel things, right? So it gives you physical sensations, which are all really in the brain. The brain is where it all happens. You think it's happening in your hand, but it's not. It's happening in your brain or wherever it is. And you have these three selves. Now, your middle self is you. That's that part of you, that infinite beam of light is the middle self. That's you. This middle self is an observer. You're on a roller coaster and you're observing what's going on. You have a lower self and an upper self. In shamanism, you've heard of people traveling to the three worlds. There's actually more than that. There's 9 worlds. But why does shamanism By shamanism, I'm talking about the generalized, if somebody types in shamanism, the majority of it, you're going to start working with what is actually Siberian animism. And there's really no such word as shamanism. That doesn't exist. A shaman is a Tengarist priest, the animist priest or priestess of the Tengarist religion. So we've, in the West, come up with the word shamanism to really describe animism. I'm getting off topic here, but when people talk about the three worlds, they're talking about Siberian shamanism, which has a lot of connections, of course, to Native American shamanism, because Native Americans originally are from Siberia. So the three worlds, people think those three worlds are somewhere out there. They're not. The three worlds are nothing more than the three selves. When you travel to the upper world, you're going to your higher self. When you travel to the lower world, you're going to your lower self. When you travel to the middle world, which is where we experience, that means that's the experience of your soul. The upper self and the lower self have merged with you for the duration of your physical life, but they are not you. When you die, when your meat bag no longer works, when it gets its expiration date and can no longer function as a three-dimensional virtual reality suit, then it will stop functioning. All of the three selves will go their different ways. Your upper self will go back to the realm of the higher beings, the elves, the ancestors, the bodhisattvas. Your lower self will stay here on earth. And depending on how you have managed your lower self can either become a ghost, it can become a demon, it can become an earth spirit. And that all has to do with you, the discipline that you provide for yourself, which is a lot of what you're doing. You have a lot of responsibility to live a spiritual life, because not living a spiritual life and being wrapped up in your narcissism is bad for your lower self. Your lower self gets all kinds of bad information, and it gets bad energy, and it gets imbalanced. And when you die, if you haven't been living your life, with discipline according to the soul, then you're going to release some garbage out onto the physical plane. People call them ghosts. Of course, the ghosts themselves are made up of somebody's lower self. The lower self consists of your subconscious and your unconscious, which is everything that you identify with. So, my name is Michael Denney. I was born in 1963. I had an alcoholic father and an overprotective mother and an abusive older brother, and I was an actor, and I'm a this and I'm a that. That's my lower self. Those are all the things that are attached to my lower self. My soul isn't attached to that. My soul is just watching. My soul is, it has to embody a character in order to be part of this play, but it doesn't identify with it. So if I do my job right and I clean my lower self out through all of these practices all over the place that I have here for you, if I'm able to utilize those in order to clean my lower self out, then when I pass away, when my meat bag hits its expiration date, then my lower self will quietly go off into the woods somewhere and become a nature spirit. And maybe then after a while, it'll become a lower self for some other new soul coming into existence. So you have a responsibility to that being. If you act out of your narcissism, your fear, and your selfishness, you're going to make it difficult for that lower self to evolve and eventually become a soul, because that's what it wants to do. Your soul is working to evolve to become a higher self and a bodhisattva. See, it goes up the chain. But this three-dimensional earth is all about the soul. These two, the upper and the lower, are here to serve the soul. And you should be serving the soul. To the extent that you're not doing that, you are at best putting off your own evolution. You're wasting time, basically, at best. At worst, you are helping other people to waste their time. You are creating a lower self that is going to have a hard time working through all the garbage that you've allowed it to accumulate. Because it's here to serve you. It's here to learn from you. Your lower self assumes you're a soul. You know better than I do. How should we handle this? The soul, the lower self is like a bodyguard, but it's not very smart. It has all the power. Your lower self does protect you. Your lower self manifests your reality. That's why the dwarves are associated with the lower self, because the dwarves are the beings that take life force energy and manifest matter from that. Magic is done by you having power over your dwarves. In fact, in Old English, the word for magic was dwarf speak. Dwergmal. Dwarf speak. And so what does that mean? Does that mean you know the language of dwarves? Or does it mean that you know how to speak to your dwarves? Dwarves in the mythology are the beings that live under the mountain, and they are constantly creating magical items for the gods. That's where the gods get their magical weapons and tools, is from the dwarves. Your lower self literally creates your reality, which is why it's important to understand that, I'm looking for my little thing. It's important to understand that you create your own reality. Let's see why I don't want that there. Let's get rid of that. Come on, let's get rid of the little dancing guy in the bottom there. There. Your lower self projects onto three-dimensional reality what you tell it to do, what you've held on to. The sad part is that if you're not following the spiritual path, then what ends up happening is that you're allowing the dumb, not very smart bodyguard try and figure out life for you. And that's not how it's supposed to work. Your lower self is like a dog, really well-trained, or maybe not well-trained, a very smart, powerful dog. Anybody who has pets know that really smart dogs take a lot of work. You know, the ones that yap all the time, they're smart. The ones that just lie around, the reason why golden retrievers are such great pets to have, they're horrible watchdogs because they just don't care. They love everybody. They just lie around all day. They don't bark. They're great pets because they're not that smart. But the little yappy ones are really smart. And if you don't train them, they get very upset and they pee and poop and tear things up and bark all the time. By the way, all of you people who leave your dogs in your backyard all day, I guarantee you that dog is barking all day while you're gone. You come home and the dog stops barking the moment you pay attention to it and you think, yeah, it's okay, my dog's quiet. No, he's quiet when you're there. When you're gone, that dog is barking all day long, and the rest of us who work from home have to listen to it. Okay, I just had to get that off my chest. As I say that, a bunch of dogs start barking. So your lower self is like a very smart dog that needs to be trained. By the way, the The cure for that is if you get a dog and you know you're not going to be home to deal with the dog, you learn to crate it. You crate it, and then you have to come and let it out every 3 or 4 hours. Dogs like to be in an enclosed space. What happens is when you're not home and your dog is out in this big yard and you think, oh, my dog is happy, it's in a big yard. No, it's got this big territory it has to protect. So it's stressed out all the time because it has this big yard. So it runs around barking. Put it in a kennel if you're not going to be there to take care of it. All right, just got to get that off my chest. All right, so if you don't train your lower self, then that's what's going to happen. It's going to run around and bark all the time. It's going to poop on things. It's going to tear things up, and it's going to be angry at you because you're not paying attention to it. You're not disciplining it. You're not training it. Dogs need that. They need that interaction. They need the pack leader to tell them what to do and where to go. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel loved. If you don't do that, then the dog is going to then decide it has to take over. It has to be the leader of the pack. What that happens for you is you're going to end up projecting all kinds of chaos onto your life. You're going to be upset and miserable and physically sick, and you're going to lack success in your life and prosperity. Your relationships are going to be crazy. You're going to be constantly complaining. You're going to be making excuses for why you do crazy, stupid things because you're not disciplining your lower self. But your lower self is the most powerful being you have. It's the most powerful tool you have. Your upper self is getting information from the higher realms, from the ascended masters, the bodhisattvas, the gods. This energy, this information comes to the higher self. The higher self then sends it to the lower self. So those of you who, like those who say, I don't know who to believe, I don't know what to believe, I already know your lower self is in chaos. Because you know what the truth is. The truth is coming to you all the time. When it comes to your higher self gives it to your lower self. If your lower self is not disciplined, well-fed, well taken care of, then it will reinterpret it and turn it into something non-existent. So either that information will not get to your soul, or by the time it gets to your soul, it'll be so discombobulated that you will be completely out of touch with reality. So your soul, a lot of people have this experience of they just watch and they don't understand, it's like they're on this roller coaster ride and they have no control over their life. And they'll say, I've done everything. I try so hard. I'm constantly doing the right things, but I never make any money. I never find love. I never get, whatever it is. It means that your lower self is out of whack. Your lower self is imbalanced. And this is what meditation, mantra, tai chi, Tao, all of these things here, what they will do is they will give you a tool to be able to educate, order your lower self. When your lower self is just like a dog, if you have a well-trained dog, you sit. The dog sits and waits for a command. Okay, go fetch, or whatever it is that you tell it to do. It wants you to tell it what to do. It should be focused on you. In the mythology, just like, in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I just watched again recently. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, what they got right in that is that the dwarves either love or hate the elves. Your lower self either loves or hates your higher self. Which is why you have such resistance when I tell you you need to do this, you need to, when You're given something that will discipline you, which won't be pleasant. You'll have to do the opposite of what your selfish, self-centered instincts are telling you to do. When you resist doing that, that's your dwarves rebelling against the elves. But what ends up happening in the trilogy is that the dwarf, I forget his name, Gimli, is that his name? He meets the elf mistress, and he falls in love with her. And the most important thing in his existence now is her. And, she could tell him to do anything and he would do it. It wouldn't matter. He's completely focused on her. Your lower self wants to be completely focused on the higher self. That's not going to happen if you don't discipline yourself and do the work. If you don't do the work, your dwarves will rebel. A good example, like The Hobbit, great example. The dwarves got so focused on gold that they ended up causing all of that damage. And the dragon in the Hobbit, the dragon represents an even deeper, lower aspect of the dwarf nature, because in Norse mythology, a dragon is actually a dwarf. It's a human being who has completely let go of their spiritual track, and they've become this giant dragon who's focused on wealth, greed, narcissism. Okay? Do you see all that? So if you want to get anywhere in your spiritual practice, you're going to have some discipline. And you're going to have to be willing to do things that are uncomfortable. You're going to have to be willing to deal with your lower self. So one of the ways, again, with dogs, is that you don't beat dogs for being, dogs. You train them with treats. You give them something positive to work for, and then they know, if I behave, I'll get a treat. Your lower self is the same way. The dwarves live off of mead, which is honey, which means life force energy. So when you do qigong, when you do the lightning qigong, or you do the 5 elements, or any this stuff that I'm doing over here, when you do that kind of stuff, you're feeding your dwarves. And then they listen, and they want to know, what am I supposed to do? What would you like me to do? They're happy, they're content, they have all this energy, they can now create. Your destiny, if you choose to accept it, is to be aligned on all 3 levels of yourself, higher, middle, and lower, so that you are able to hear the higher self, which will guide you into your highest dharma, your orlog, your origin law, your true path. When you are on your true path, you will have access to your deepest soul desires. When you are conscious of your deepest soul desires, and you decide, I want this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to have that, your lower self says, yes, sir. And it goes off to project that into your external reality. This is why bear in mind, I haven't achieved enlightenment yet. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I still have a lot of internal conflicts that I deal with. I still have unconscious, unresolved issues that I'm continuing to look at. I have a therapist. I have a couple of different groups that I attend. So when I tell people they need to have a therapist, it's not because you're totally screwed up. That's just one of the ways to work through unresolved childhood stuff. That's what therapy is there for. That's why I offer apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is, the spiritual equivalent. I'm here to mirror back to you what's in your unconscious mind. I'm here to help guide you into practices and techniques which will help you discipline that dog in your lower self so that you can train it to do what you want. And when you get when you're in that, you don't have to be perfect, but when you have these three lined up, you know what your soul desire is, you can simply choose. I'm going to have whatever the hell it is. $1 million, perfect relationship, perfect health, and it will manifest in a way that maybe you're not even clear how it's going to manifest, but it will. Your third eye and your lower self are connected. Your third eye projects out the subconscious. The subconscious is, the unconscious is really the bulk of your lower self, but then you have this thing called the subconscious. And that's sort of like the chamber. When you have a gun and you're going to fire a bullet, you have to load the chamber. The subconscious mind is the chamber. You load it with an intention, and then you fire it. You fire the gun out of your third eye. Now, if you don't have an obedient lower self, it doesn't matter what you put in the chamber. Your lower self will take it out and put in whatever it wants. If you haven't learned to deal with that and overcome it. So that's why positive affirmations don't work. Positive affirmations only work if you are already aligned and if those affirmations are in agreement with your unconscious programming. If your unconscious programming, if your unconscious programming has assumptions that are negative, like the world is out to get you, you're always going to be poor, nobody loves you. If you have those kinds of things in your unconscious, which means consciously you're not aware of it, then it doesn't matter what positive affirmations you tell yourself, because your unconscious mind will delete it and put in chaos. It'll take out the bullet of happiness and prosperity. It'll take that out and it'll put in its own bullet of chaos, misery, and pain. And then when you intend for happy things, then you're going to end up with all this nonsense, victimization, chaos. That all goes away when you align. And that's everything that we're talking about. All right? So I've repeated myself 5 or 6 times, and I'm happy to stop talking. I don't see any. It says there's 30 people on here, so I'm happy to take any questions. Let me just make sure that everything's working right. Refresh the page here. Oh, there we go. Vincent.thunderwizard.com says hello. You can go to his website if you want to get an astrology reading for him. What else? Bryce Gertson question. When helping people who've experienced severe trauma, what method has worked best for you to get them out of victim mentality? So my first response to that, Bryce, is the only time that you should be helping people work through their severe trauma is when they have asked you. If you're talking about people in your life who are traumatized and they have not specifically come to you and said, hey, can you help me? Then it's none of your business. Beyond that, if you are somebody who has decided that you want to help people, you should be helping people you don't have a personal agenda with. You should be setting yourself up as some kind of spiritual counselor or helper or healer, and people should pay you money. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. My guess is you're probably talking about friends or family whom you have a lot of compassion for and you want to help them. And so you're taking it upon yourself to go and help them. This is called codependence. It's none of your business. Everybody has to carry their own cross. Everybody has to find it. The only way that people can reverse trauma and heal is when they consciously decide that they're going to get help. And that starts with them asking the universe, can you please help me find something or somebody to help me work through this? They first have to acknowledge that there is trauma that needs to be resolved. One of the things that happens with trauma is that people go into a trauma state, which is they go into a state of trying to survive. For them, it's a war zone. And if you've been in a war zone, you don't have time to sit around and cry about your childhood or work through your feelings, because you're going to get killed and you'll get other people killed. So you can't. You have to pretend everything's okay. You have to pretend like you've got it. People who experience severe trauma tend to end up getting themselves in all kinds of chaos. These are all ineffective defense mechanisms. These are all ineffective survival strategies, which need to be dealt with in the lower self. So if you're asking me, when helping people who've experienced severe trauma, who have come to me and asked for my help and paid me for my time, then, I counsel them based on my experience. So Bryce, I'm happy for you to correct me, but I'm pretty sure you're asking about how do you go and help people for free who you have a personal agenda with, meaning they're your friend or your family, and they haven't asked for your help, but you've taken it upon yourself. You're going to help them. Correct me if I'm wrong. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Question. I feel like my inner child has a lot of unexpressed anger and rage that it's holding on to. How do I release it, process it, and heal? Are you in therapy? That's where it would start. Find a therapist that you can talk to. You have to talk it out with somebody. And feel free to go audition as many therapists as you want until you find the person that's going to best help you. Find a mentor. Vincent, you're not my apprentice. I mean, you're a certification holder of the astrology of mine, but you're not my apprentice. So you'd need to be working with me on a weekly or monthly basis. I've had people work with me on a monthly basis, which is what most people do. But there are people that I've worked with who, had some real major issues. And they only worked with me once a month. And so every week was, the majority of the time was me trying, fighting against their unconscious resistance. And then by the end of the call, they'd begin to see what they needed to do. And then I wouldn't see them again for a month. And a month later, they were, back in the same, self-destructive mindset. And so a lot of them didn't end up staying with me. They'll end up stopping working with me after a while, or they'll sabotage it or something like that. So it's really important. You got to have somebody, a therapist, group. This is 12-step groups are great. Group therapy is also really good. You got to have a group of people, a support group that will hold up the mirror to your unconscious so that you can see it. And you have to fight against it. It's, your unconscious is trying to survive. It thinks it knows what you need in order to survive, and it's going to make decisions for you. And when you do things that are really in your best interest but go against your programming, your unconscious mind will do everything in its power to stop you. This is why it's so hard for people to heal. This is why it's so hard for people to why progress is so slow. Somebody asked me, if I go to therapy, will I get will I just get a pill and it'll all be over? It doesn't matter how many times I tell this person there's no magic pill. The insistence of their lower self to avoid the pain of looking at itself is so overwhelming that this person doesn't remember. Every single time I tell them, it takes time. It may take years. They don't want to hear that. Everybody's looking for that pill, a magic pill. All this stuff that that I'm teaching here, especially the lightning qigong, I mean, it speeds that process up. But if you're like me, there's this really great payoff, the carrot, which is that it feels good. When I do this stuff, I get really high off of it. I end up going through these kinds of Dr. Manhattan experiences, but that's what keeps me in it. So find whatever practice is going to give you the payoff that'll keep you to do the work. But there's no shortcut, guys. There are shortcuts, But the shortcuts do not, in other words, the shorter it is between you and enlightenment, the more intense your Dr. Manhattan experience will be. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have instant relief without going through, a death. You don't want to feel a lot of pain, then you got to go more slowly. If somebody wants to go through a transformation but have it be more user friendly, then do Kundalini yoga. Kundalini is the psyche, and it is more user friendly, and the energy comes to you and says, hey, there's this issue, maybe we should look at it. And you go, I don't want to look at it yet. And the Kundalini says, okay, no problem. You do this stuff. It says, oh, you want to become an immortal? All right, let's start tearing all this garbage out of you. Now you have to be, and just shoving it in your face. And you don't have it's not as user friendly, but you get the power. So you got to pick one. Can't have it both ways. What else? God Emperor, question. I woke up and was dazed, and I was telling myself to snap out of it. I found out it was my lower self because it didn't want to die. I told it to fuck off, and I'm still doing the thunder pose. Why are you so harsh on yourself? That was abusive. You just abused yourself. You woke up and you were dazed, and you told yourself to snap out of it. That was really harsh. Okay, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I found out it was my lower self because it didn't want to die. And then so your lower self is trying to help you. Why are you telling your lower self to fuck off? God Emperor. I gave you a hard time last time because you asked a really controlling, selfish thing that was, you were asking me, what karma is going to come down on you if you, abuse somebody else, basically. And I said, what the hell are you asking me that question for? But, I'm not trying to train you to beat yourself up. So remember what I say about what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is having all of your thoughts, all of your feelings, all of your impulses, all of your instincts, accepting them fully without any judgment, and still having the consciousness to act constructively. So what you've just done is beat yourself up for your lower self trying to protect you. Your issue that you have, you and I both know the issue that you have, that's your lower self trying to protect you. It makes some mistakes, but it's trying to help you. So stop beating it up. You know that you have really harsh judgment against other people. You know that. I've told you there are certain things you can't say on this channel that if you do, I'll block you. And to your credit, you haven't voiced those. But I know you think it all the time. Very judgmental. This is part of your issue, is to feel superior to everybody all the time, to find other people to be lazy or disgusting, or that's part of your issue that you should be working with your therapist. It's part of your the dynamic of your condition. But that every time that you're judgmental to other people, it's really projection. So every time you're saying about the liberal this and that, and liberals are destroying the world, that's your projection of yourself. So every time you feel that, realize that you're beating yourself up every time you judge other people. And when your lower self comes to you and says, I'm afraid of dying, you don't tell it to fuck off. You go, oh, I'm so sorry you feel that way. That's horrible. Come talk to me about it. Imagine if your 4-year-old son or daughter came to you and said, Daddy, I had a bad dream. I'm afraid of dying. Would you tell it to fuck off? No, you would say, come here. Let me give you a hug. It's all right. You're not going to die. I'm here. I'm going to take care of you. You've got to start loving yourself. God Emperor, your condition makes you see things in black and white. And it's going to be very difficult for you, but staying in that middle place. When I tell you not to put a comment on here until after you've listened to me, even though I know that you've been thinking about it for 12 hours and you can't wait for me to come on because you have this question you've been thinking about, which has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, and I tell you to wait, you're waiting, and living with that is an act of love for yourself. Tolerating yourself, tolerating the feelings, and not having to act them out. That's an act of love. Doesn't mean that it's easy. So you got to be kinder to yourself. Okay? I know you're doing your best. But you say, I thought the lower self was a bad thing. I never said it was a bad thing. Go back and watch it again. That's your judgment. I never said that. Okay. I don't see anything else. I don't see anything else here. No other questions. All right, so that's the deal. So we got thunderwizard.com. That is what keeps me on the air. There's going to be some new things coming. I'll just wait and see if you guys end up wanting to do it or not. Maybe the other channel it'll work better there. Courses.thunderwizard.com. All of my books, services, everything you can find there. There's energyhealing.thunderwizard.com if you want me to do my practice and focus on you. This is the nirvana of this channel right here. Go to thunderwizard.com, click around until you see Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. Subscribe to that. Go, scroll down to where you see level 1, the first videos for the level 1, because they go up. You have to scroll down to find it. And then simply click play. Do that video practice. You don't have to think about it. You can just follow me. I tell you exactly what to do. If you do that, you will be working with all 3 of the energies in your body. You will be working with life force energy, chi, prana. You'll be working with kundalini, which is the nervous system. And you'll be working with the undiscovered esoteric energy of the lightning, which is surrounding your heart. Very few people tap into that. You'll be working with all 3 of those things. You'll have the most powerful energetic tools to achieve your highest awareness in this life. All right, a question just popped up here. Priestess Tia. Hi Tia. She says, can the shamanic journey for the 3 selves be used to clear out negative influences? Yes. I received information on who I am, but no insight on any blockages. Great. That's a very good place. I know enough about you to know the kind of work that you do with yourself. So then there's just maintenance. I mean, if you've worked through the blocks, and there's nothing that's coming to your awareness, then that's a good thing. So the litmus test is your life getting better? So a lot of people, when they do this stuff, they talk to me and they start talking about how crazy they're feeling and all the intense emotions and the anger, and they're impatient, and which means that they're finally, their feelings are thawing out, and they're worried. And I know, because I went through it. You're worried that this negativity you're feeling is going to hurt other people, damage other people. But the thing to do is to look at your life objectively and go, am I healthier? Do I have more money? Are people responding to me well? That is telling you that you're making progress. You may feel horrible. You may want to put a gun to your head, literally. That is just a feeling. My ancestors, the way that they looked at life, they said, those who die in battle go to Valhalla. They didn't say those who feel good. They said those who die in battle. It is, in other words, it's assumed that when you go after your highest good in this life, you will be facing what you experience to be a life and death battle over and over again. When you're willing to die in battle, when you're willing to lose everything, give up everything, to give your soul what it wants, then you will win every time. Every single time, and there's been a few different times. Every single time where I literally gave up everything and said, I'm going to achieve this or I'm going to do that, even if it kills me, and I meant it. I mean, for instance, when I left Idaho to go to California, one of the things I was going to start surfing again. By the way, the waves were amazing today. I was out there. It's just, I can't even begin to tell you the fantasy that I'm experiencing. I want to go into it, but just bear in mind that the fantasy I'm experiencing is beyond even what I could have thought for myself. And I have a lot of internal resistance to it. I'm continuously fighting my own internal resistance to this amazing paradise that I have. But, I was willing. I was 49 years old. It was almost 10 years ago. I was 49 years old. I was out of shape and I was riddled with pain, back pain, neck pain, joint pain. I could barely function. And I knew that I wanted to surf, and I got myself back to Southern California, bought myself a surfboard and a wetsuit, and I was totally out of shape, and the waves were double overhead and the water was freezing cold, and I paddled out into those conditions. And I said, I don't care if I die. I have to surf. I have to do this. And pretty soon, as I started getting out there past the waves, my body kicked in, because if I didn't, I was going to drown. I had to paddle over those waves. If I didn't get out past those waves, I was going to get stuck in the impact zone and I was going to drown. Amazingly, all of my physical pain left me. I was willing to die for what I wanted. And so you have to have that. People ask me, somebody just asked me, if I do this one thing, will it be like a magic pill and everything will go away? No. Stop asking me how to avoid the challenge. Stop asking me how to avoid your own Dr. Manhattan experience. Just stop asking. Now, Priestess Tia, what you're saying is that you're not currently experiencing that, so that's good. But just take a look at your objective life. Is your objective life getting better? Then, you're doing the work. Just keep doing it. Just do the maintenance. Once you've achieved Valhalla for this moment, because you'll have to do it again, and then you just maintain what you have. And you know how to do that. It's doing the same thing you've been doing, and this time, it won't be as traumatic. So I hope I answered your questions. Jameson, question, do you have thoughts on spiritual materialism? I don't even know what it means. Idea of seeking after intellectual, spiritual knowledge, attainment as distraction. For example, not watching 10 Signs of Dr. because I feel it will feed the penchant within me, perfectionism. Okay, so Jameson, I'm happy to continue to repeat over and over for you. Your main thing is you just can't avoid criticizing yourself for anything. You're just constantly beating yourself up. It wouldn't matter what. I tell you to walk on your tiptoes, you're going to criticize yourself for that. I tell you to walk on your heels, you're going to criticize yourself for that. I tell you to sleep in, you're going to criticize yourself. I tell you to get up too early, you're going to criticize yourself. You just criticize yourself all the time. Stop so much thinking. Look at, to ask one question, you have to put 2 paragraphs. So much thinking. Your intellect is an excuse to avoid your emotions. So if I'm your teacher, I'm assuming that you see me as one of your teachers, you're asking me, should I not watch this one thing because this one title I think might, what am I going to all of a sudden out of nowhere, have one video that's going to be the exact opposite of what you need? All the rest of them are going to be helpful, but that one is going to be that thing that you can't, and it's, just stop beating yourself up. I can't answer the question because it's really what you're saying behind the question is, I can't just be with myself. I can't tolerate me. My own essence and my own existence is intolerable for me, and I need some way to escape. So I'm gonna criticize myself, and then the self-criticism becomes so uncomfortable, and then you'll find something else. You'll go and smoke some weed, or you'll find some abusive person to date, right? These are all ways to avoid your feelings. So when you're doing what's the right thing, and you need to be talking with your sponsor, working your steps, talking with me when you can, doing all the things you need to do. When you do that, you are going to go through periods where you're going to be really, really, really uncomfortable because of what you've lived through, and it's part of your healing. And there's no way around it, my friend. So I can't even answer your question, because it's really just, I'm uncomfortable with myself, and I can't stand it. And the only thing to do is just to acknowledge that. That's it. Nothing else needs to happen. It's okay just to be uncomfortable. That's it. Enlightenment is having all your thoughts, feelings, impulses, desires, instincts, accepting them 100% without judgment, and then having the consciousness to take constructive action. That's it. There's nothing else. Right? Sinley, honest feeling, glad to start the 90-day challenge today. Good for you. I hope it helps you. What else? Nothing else? Priestess Tia says she understands what I said, so I'm glad it was helpful. All right. I'm sleepy. I've got a couple hours before I get to go get a massage, so I'm going to intake some protein, and I think I'm going to take a nap. Great, awesome waves. I got to find somebody to film me surfing so I can show it off to you guys and show you where I live. If you saw where I lived, man, every time I go surfing, it doesn't matter. There's miles of beaches and points, and and I pick a different place every time. But whenever I go surfing, I have to get to the beach. I have to walk through the jungle. Doesn't matter where. There's just there's these trails that go through the jungle to the beach, and I have to walk through the rainforest and listen to the birds that sound like they're Star Wars planes. I can't even make the sound. It sounds like a laser. I think they're called whips. And these other birds and the parrots and the cockatoos and the turkeys running around, and it's just, I'm telling you guys, you can have everything you want. You can have everything you've ever wanted and more, if you're willing to do the work. All right. Talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you when I see ya.